So, hey guys, welcome back to GG's Football and Cheer. I'm Nicholas, and today I'm joined with a really special guest, Coach Dylan Hines. He is one of the strength and conditioning coaches with us at the Ottawa varsity football team. I'd like to thank him for coming today.
Thanks for having me, Nick. I'm excited to be out here and kind of be able to chat with you a little bit. Just to give a brief kind of introduction on myself. Named Dylan Hines. Been a strength and conditioning coach with the football team for going on year 2 now. And then I've also been a personal trainer at a gym called Movati Athletic for a little over 5 years now. Kind of got into this stuff through going to school at Acadia University, where I graduated with my bachelor's in kinesiology. I played varsity football there for 4 years and just kind of fell in love with training and, having a coach and understanding what the value of, high quality coaching, programming, exercise execution, and all that kind of stuff, and what it can do to improve performance, which when we're on the field or whatever, surface that you play your sport on, that's obviously our main goal, is to perform better, but then also to be able to take this stuff and use it for the rest of your life and just maintain, being healthy, trying to reduce injuries and pains and that kind of stuff, and just live a better life.
Yeah, I thought that was a really great intro, Dylan. So you were talking a little bit how you said that you really fell in love with it kind of by going through the experience yourself. So when you went to Acadia, did you actually study like human kinetics or anything like that, or is it just really something that you fell in love with your time there, and then decided to kind of make a career out of it from there?
Yeah, so I did study kinesiology while I was at Acadia. We don't have like a arts or a science stream like there is at the University of Ottawa. Ours is just a bachelor's, so we get a little bit of a mix of both. And throughout my first couple of years, originally going into kinesiology, like most 18, 19-year-olds, you go in and being like, okay, I want to be a physiotherapist. You learn very early on that, one, it's extremely difficult to get into school for physiotherapy, and two, just in general, not everyone's going to make it there. And my passions kind of changed as I went through having, a actual strength and conditioning coach there every single day, every single session. And especially for a guy like me, who's never like the most physically gifted kind of guy, I really benefited from having a coach. So that's kind of one of the things that, made me get passionate about it. And then, so my last couple of years there, I was able to go down more of a specialized stream through a program that we have called the Exercise Science and Training Practicum, where essentially for my last 2 years, I interned with our strength conditioning coach, as well as being an athlete, and a bunch of different avenues where I was able to kind of accrue knowledge and experience that's put me in a pretty good position being here today.
Yeah, for sure. It seems like you had obviously a lot of different experience, especially probably a big advantage that you're actually doing it yourself. So you got to not only learn about it, but actually be hands-on with obviously yourself doing it and kind of taking their kind of skills, but then also applying it to yourself. And then kind of earlier you were saying you also worked at Movati Athletic. Are some of the people that you're working there, is it athletes as well, or is it weight loss, or what kind of clients do you generally kind of stick to kind of in the private side of it maybe?
So on the private side, a lot of my clients are just your regular Gen Pop clients. I've had a couple of clients that are athletes, but for the most part, it's your Gen Pop. So it's people who are, just looking to get stronger, looking to feel better, so lose some weight, put on a little muscle mass. And a lot of the times, it's people trying to live better lives. It's one of the big things I tend to work with.
That's probably super rewarding, especially the people who are just trying to kind of better themselves, as yourself, kind of going through that process with them, I'm sure is kind of super rewarding for you. Do you have a preference kind of whether you prefer kind of athletes, or you like more the one-on-one sessions, or?
This is a funny question because I get asked this quite often, and they're both, they're like completely opposite ends of the spectrum, right?
Yeah. My
passion, my heart will always lead to the side of athletes, because that was me. I especially when it comes to football, like I love football, I love training. So when you combine those two things, like it's just one of those things where it's just so easy to kind of go in and do it and do all the hard work and the long hours and all that kind of stuff, because I'm just so passionate about both the things. But there is a lot of rewarding experiences that I've had on the private sector that make it extremely like close to my heart. I tell this story quite frequently, but one of my favorite stories I've had with one of my clients was, she came in for one of our sessions one day. We've been training for a couple months at this point. She had some pretty bad knee issues, and she came in and she told me that she was able to, walk from the back of the parking lot all the way into the gym without any knee pain, right? And for most people, it seems like a very, very small thing. But when you've struggled with some sort of pain, especially when it's knee pain for however many years, and now you can start to do like little things that we might take for granted, such as walking, and you can do that without pain. It's definitely, it's a kind of a life-changing moment. So there's a lot of rewards like that on the private sector, but from a passion standpoint, for sure, it's definitely gonna be like towards the athletes.
Yeah, at least for you, it seems like at least you get a really good balance that you're passionate about both of them, and you really get a good balance of, again, the private and the athlete side. So you said that you were doing the internship over at Acadia, and then you kind of moved on. So when did you kind of decide that you wanted to go to a different university, or how did the process for that kind of work for you? Like how you got to actually the University of Ottawa?
Okay. So I'm originally born and raised from Ottawa. So when I graduated school, just natural transition to come back home and kind of figure my life out. And I had actually trained with Joey Kwasniewski, who's our performance director now, and still has, a lot of, impact in what we do on the football team. He's still very present and coaches a lot with us still. But for the most part, like he was kind of running all the coaching programs. And going into my final year at Acadia, I had actually trained with him in his private business. So I was able to train with a lot of the GG's guys and compete with them. So I already had a kind of a previous relationship with Joey, and he knew my story being in kinesiology, and kind of that's what I was working into. So I would say I was maybe at Movati for a year and a half, and I just reached out to him because I wanted to try and like get back into doing some sort of athlete work. And I actually interned with him for another, let's say, year and a half, close to 2 years. And then just my business on the private side was kind of booming at that point, and I couldn't any longer fit the hour requirement for the internship. So I was probably off of that for, again, like another year or two. And just going into the 2019 season, he had messaged me kind of I want to say July before training camp started, saying that he needed some help, and he was looking to bring me on as a staff member. And at that point, some things like I kind of grew levels throughout the gym, so I was able to kind of train less clients and still make a good living. So I had a little bit more free time, and I jumped at the opportunity to come back and get back around the guys and be around the sport and that I love, and try and help push you guys to be bigger, faster, stronger. At the end of the day, the goal is going to be to compete for a Vanier when we're allowed to get back on the field.
Mm-hmm. So RZ, that was really great that you have those connections with Joey and stuff like that, and that kind of allowed you that you're kind of doing your own business, and you decide where you wanted to work and how you work. So that's obviously probably the dream for a lot of people, that it's not I have to work so many hours just to withstand that. Now you're actually at the point where you're able to pick and choose what you actually get to do.
Yeah, sure.
In terms of, again, you're not old per se, but have you found that there's a big difference between when you went to school and when you were actually training on the strength conditioning, in terms of maybe how it's developed or changed from that time, or it's not a big enough window maybe that the theory hasn't changed so much?
I wouldn't say necessarily the theory has changed all that much, especially like some of the basic level like physiology, biomechanics, and that kind of stuff has been the same. Obviously techniques and things are getting a little bit more advanced, but where I'd say like the biggest change is going to be in like the science behind things. So a good example is stuff like using velocity, jump mats, all these different things to get real-time data of what, how fast somebody's moving a bar, doing a movement, how high they're jumping, especially along with the recovery side. There's been a lot of science in that realm. So that way, because recovery is a huge part of your training, right? Because it doesn't matter how hard you train if you don't recover well. So I'm seeing a lot of changes through the science from that kind of standpoint. Because before it used to be all just like percentage based, and it was a lot of, I don't want to say a lot of guessing, but there was less kind of pinpoint accuracy as to where an athlete was at a given time until you did more testing. Okay. So now with with more of the science and the technology and all that kind of stuff, we can get more real-time feedback of where an athlete is right now and make better adjustments as they need it.
For sure. I like that you talked about, again, the science side. And that was one of the things when I was kind of coming up with that idea. I thought that maybe it would be the science. And then I almost had to kind of take a step back to say, well, it's not like 20 years ago where a lot of the different theories were really different. But even it's nice to see that in a short span like that, you're saying that we've completely come from a whole different science. Like, do you try and implement that in with your private clients a little bit as well with the recovery and kind of explain that and get them on that side? Or is it more on the athlete side that?
A little bit, a lot of the science also comes through like with new technology, right? And that's where with the private side, given that, they already spend quite a bit of money to work with me, it's hard to kind of convince a client to then go ahead and spend even more money for things that they may not necessarily care about, right? Like, for example, so I wear this thing called a Whoop band. Okay. So it basically tracks my activity, tracks my calories, my sleep, something called my HRV, so heart rate variability, respiratory rate, a whole bunch of other things. So for me, right, an investment in this, I value it because I value the input that I get from it, right? And it can allow me to make better decisions on what I'm going to train, how hard I'm going to train. Maybe I need to rest more. Like maybe if I didn't sleep well, it's probably a good sign that maybe I don't need to push my workout that hard because I'm not going to recover from it, right? Okay. So most Gen Pop clients aren't that invested into it. Some of them will be. I've had a couple clients who are, they jump all the way in, you say jump, they say how high. So they'll kind of do that kind of stuff. And then trying to implement it onto the university side, in a perfect world, like everybody would be able to have one of these or some sort of other tracker. And, we might be able to have some other fancy stuff in the gym. Obviously that doesn't come without a cost. And, trying to find a budget for all that kind of stuff can be difficult. So as of right now, through the university, we don't have anything like that, but it definitely could be something down the road. Like, we've started using the Team Builder app. So that way we can kind of organize everybody's training a little bit better than before, where it was all kind of just through Google Docs and everybody was tracking their weights through, actual kind of pen and paper. So now we've kind of cut down on the waste of that. We were able to keep things in a little bit more neat and tidy area on Team Builder. So we're starting to get some of that stuff integrated, but unlike the US teams that have much bigger budgets, it's unfortunately we don't have access to all that kind of stuff just yet.
No, we're definitely not Alabama or anything like that with $1 million facilities, but I still feel like we do have quite a bit at the university though. Again, I haven't even really seen the HPC center, which is our high performance center. I haven't even seen that personally, but just through like quick videos and stuff I see, it seems like quite a kind of special area that all I've really seen is the dome and even the Minto. I've only really seen it from the outside. So I feel like we still do have a large amount of kind of funds and stuff that we have invested a lot in the athletics department. But did you find there's a big difference between this school and the other one that you were at in terms of maybe facilities or structure, maybe the theory behind it, or they're more or less similar at this point?
So in terms of the structure, a very big difference. So Acadia being a very small, school in a little village called Wolfville in Nova Scotia, at any one point in time, there's like maybe 3,000 to 5,000 students there. So it's a very small school. With that being said, we don't necessarily have the same kind of alumni funding or means to build these big fancy facilities. Now, mind you, I say that. So when I got recruited there back in 2011 was my first year. there were hopes of getting like a new change room, new weight room, all that kind of stuff. When I first started, our weight room, which is by far my favorite weight room I've ever trained in, because it's not all fancy, but it's just like you knew that you were there for hard work, right? And it was just like some random room in our our athletics building, and then eventually we went into like old squash courts that we weren't like the facility wasn't using anymore, so we transitioned down there, and then it was supposed to come a little bit earlier, but we were finally able to secure the funding and all that kind of stuff, and now they have a nice, beautiful facility for the athletes. So and actually similar thing to the University of Ottawa, like even that HPC, like it's only been there maybe 5 years. It's not old at all. And when I was training with Joey, again, it was the old pit and a big runway of turf where all the squash courts used to be. So you're seeing things come along as equipment changes, as funding gets better, all that kind of stuff. You're starting to see a lot of improvements in the facilities. So it's been pretty cool to actually see it transition over the course of the last, I guess we'll call it a decade.
That's actually funny that you kind of mentioned with the squash courts, because my dad played squash for like a long time, and he's kind of everywhere he goes, they get rid of the squash courts. So he only really has in the penis with, and he tried to take me a few times, and then all the time my sister's like, I think they got rid of the squash courts at UR, and he's like, you're getting rid of them everywhere. No one plays squash anymore, which I thought was kind of funny that you say that everyone's getting rid of those for, I guess, from the 90s or whenever that was at its peak. But yeah, it's cool that you've seen kind of the whole development. So again, you're saying 2011 kind of to now, so you've been able to see again like a decade of progression and stuff like that. Then obviously, it's even at a small school, you have to have that high level in order to be competitive. Moving on to kind of like, I guess, current day. Obviously, COVID is a huge problem for not only us as a school, but I'm sure you privately, it's a lot harder when gyms get shut down every 3 weeks, it seems like. But what would you say was maybe one of the biggest struggles for that, either on yourself or clients or?
Well, from a private side, it's definitely been like trying to keep clients engaged to want to try and train and move. Because and a lot of the time when you have a client come to you from a private sector, like it's not even necessarily that they don't, some of it's that they don't know exactly how to exercise or how to do it properly and all that kind of stuff, and they need that kind of direction. But a lot of the time it's just they need accountability. They need something or someone that they're held accountable to, that they can get up, from their busy lives, because I work with a lot of moms and dads and high level executives and people who are just super, super busy, right? And it's very easy to when you have those kinds of responsibilities, let your own health and activity kind of go to the wayside. So that's the perk of having, an investment from a monetary standpoint into sessions, because now you're a little bit more committed. And then also having like scheduled appointments. It's like, it's no different than going to the doctor. Okay, I have a scheduled appointment. It's in my day. I go and I do it. So from obviously this kind of off and on that we've had over the course of the last year, that's been a big thing. Is just trying to keep them engaged and keep them moving. So I've been doing Zoom sessions with clients that want to do it, kind of checking in with them and just providing support the best way I can. And then from the athlete side, a very similar thing, right? And especially because from an athlete standpoint, you guys are all very competitive, and there was a big mood killer last year whenever the OUA had decided to cancel the season. You could see that there was a significant drop off in guys' engagement with the programming, the Zoom sessions, all the other stuff that we were doing. Mind you, we were also transitioning head coaches at the time, so that was part of it as well. But just staying engaged, and then once we are doing these Zoom sessions or any sort of training, it's like, okay, how can we improve performance or get somebody to their goal with very minimal equipment? So you have to be very, very creative in a sense in order to have an effective workout, and that's going to allow somebody to progress, right? Because at the end of the day, like, yeah, moving is important because it's just generally healthy to move. But at the same time, like, everybody's kind of wants to get better at something, right? So we want to see progression. We want to see that we're getting better. So it's definitely taken a lot of creativity to get to those points, but I think we're doing a pretty good job. And, as you know, we just restarted our winter training on Zoom this week, and it was a great first week. We're all trying to figure it out. We're all trying to make it work. And the guys that were out, I think, did a fantastic job, and they pushed themselves. And, the more and more we do it, the better it'll get. The more guys will get comfortable communicating through Zoom, and we'll be able to kind of have that competitive atmosphere that we would have in the gym.
For sure. And I totally agree with when you're talking about like the accountability kind of thing and pushing yourself, which I found was one of the hard things, where when we were off, I was like, well, I still have Team Builder to have all the workouts, and I'm like, I'm going to do it all. And then I would do it all, but I wouldn't feel as fatigued me, because I think I was maybe giving myself too much break in between, or I didn't have it there, as opposed to even when we're doing these 1 hour workouts, it's like you have no rest and it's a lot faster, and I feel a lot more fatigued. And I feel like having someone just kind of like saying, no, you don't get a break, you can't go upstairs and go talk to your mom or whatever, go do your workout, is working a lot better for me, at least. Even though I still was doing the workouts, I feel like I'm progressing a lot better. Even in this first week, I thought we did a really great job, again, with the numbers that we had and how many people we were able to get on with that, just to kind of continue that. But I was happy to see that, again, we are back to training, and that I do feel that is a lot, obviously, better than me doing it by myself.
Yeah,
for sure. And then kind of moving through, is there something kind of that you try and implement that kind of gives a Dylan Hines kind of special treatment that you kind of bring to the table when you're training someone, that's kind of like your signature kind of, or even an approach maybe, or maybe your attitude, anything like that?
I don't know if I'd necessarily say it's from like an approach from a methods or a programming standpoint. At the end of the day, like methods and systems, they all have a place, but they all work, right?
Yeah.
Like a system, in my opinion, is just a way for you to kind of like organize your thoughts in a direction that you want to go. Methods are just how you kind of put that all together. But at the end of the day, like for me, my focus is always going to be like, what are the big principles that we can focus on that are always going to have a good return on investment? So a lot of the times it's the basic stuff, right? How well can you move from a squat, hip hinge, push, pull, carry, all that kind of stuff, which seems very basic, but a lot of the time, once you get down the rabbit hole of a system or a method, a lot of the time we start to lose, like a quote I love, you start to lose the forest for the trees, right? You start focusing on like these singular trees that, maybe they're fancy, they're new, they look cool, they gain a lot of attention, but they start losing the base principle at which they're supposed to be rooted from, right? So, just trying to be principles focused, focus on like the basic stuff, the stuff that I know is going to have a good return on investment. And then once we get to the point where we can start getting a little bit more, fancy, if you want to call it, then or advanced, then we'll go there. And another big thing too is just like, I want to be kind of the best coach, not just from a programming standpoint, but from a communication standpoint. I want to be able to connect with you guys, connect with my clients, so that way we can build that trust. So that way, you guys have trust in me that I'm going to do everything in my power to put you guys in a position to progress and compete on Saturdays, right? So focusing on, the little things like how I communicate with you guys. What are the words that I'm using? How am I trying to relate the movements that we're doing back into, your sport? Like for you as a receiver, right? I don't want you to just do an exercise because it's written down on Team Builder. I want you to understand the purpose of like, okay, if I get better at this exercise, okay, it will have some sort of physical carryover to what I do in the field. And not from the sense of like it's the exact same position that you're going to be on the field, but it's going to allow you to express your strength, your power, your physical qualities even better on the field, right? So I want you guys to have a deeper understanding of, the why behind what we're doing for each individual, position, sport, or daily activities, all that kind of stuff. So I'd say it's, again, less of the methods and the systems aspect that makes kind of it the Dylan touch, and more so my attention to detail from a coaching standpoint, and always trying to keep the principles being like our big blocks that we focus on.
Yeah, and I totally agree with the communication and personal part. Again, one of the reasons why I asked you to be interviewed today was because obviously we do spend like a lot of time together training, and I am comfortable with you. So you were actually the first person I asked to be interviewed. So I do appreciate that. And then same thing when you're talking about like, why are we doing this exercise? I do try and ask you and Joey that a lot, and you guys always do have a great answer for me to tell me exactly what we're doing and why we're doing it. Again, not that I'm challenging what you're saying, obviously, but I just want to visualize in my head kind of what we're doing and what the actual application of it is. So I do appreciate when you guys kind of do that for me.
Well, and to touch on that just a little bit, like, if one, it is from a challenging standpoint, that's great. I find as a coach, like the more questions you get asked, it's going to do one of two things, right? If you get asked a question and you can defend your position on it, okay, all it's going to do is make your stance on that even stronger. Okay, and you're going to be able to explain it better and more concise. Or two, it's going to make you think of different ways that are going to be more beneficial, okay, to either the team, the specific athlete, the specific client, whoever's in front of you. Okay, and two, if it's more from just like a general curiosity standpoint where you're like, okay, well, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Why does my foot need to be turned this way? Right? Now, all of a sudden, you have a better understanding of what you're doing. So you're more conscious of what you're doing. You're going to have more intent behind the movement that you're doing, right? Because you're invested because you have a knowledge base behind it. And now all of a sudden, you're going to be able to put more effort into it. So you're only going to get better from it, right? So for me as a coach, like I love when people ask me questions because I'm either going to reaffirm my stance on something that I already know. I'm going to get creative to try and think of something in a different way that's only going to make me better, or you're going to get better because now you're more invested into what we're actually doing.
Yeah, and I do agree with that. When I do ask questions, again, you guys are always super open to explaining it to me, and again, I feel like from a curiosity perspective, I'm always able to kind of understand and get my stuff answered. So unless you have any questions for me, I'll kind of get our final question here, is if you had any advice for any of our viewers or someone who's kind of looking, maybe who's coming into a university program, just kind of what kind of mental or approach they should take when kind of going into a weight room with a strength and conditioning coach?
I would say, like, are you talking from like an athlete standpoint? If they're coming
from an athlete,
right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. The biggest thing is just be like, be open to what the programming is going to be. Ask a ton of questions again, because the more invested you are into it, the more you're going to get out from it, or like get from it, right? And if you come from, let's say, another background with other strength conditioning coaches, maybe their methods, their systems are different. Don't try not to pick sides. Think about how, ask questions so that way maybe the coach can explain to you that you're with right now. Okay, well, what's the difference maybe from our methods and our system and why it's beneficial for you right now? How does it mix and complement maybe what they're doing from a different coach's standpoint, and just like do your best to buy in, and understand that, we have your best interest at heart. And if you come in, give 110% effort, one, you'll reap the benefits, hopefully from a performance standpoint. And two, we're going to give you as much information as we can. So that way you can do this stuff for the rest of your life. You can stay active, you can stay healthy, and stay strong for not just your university athletic career, but beyond.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like anytime that we kind of, again, the stuff that you teach us, it's really easy to apply it kind of at home, and we understand the ideas, and especially coming in with an open mind, I found was one of the biggest kind of things to kind of listen to what they say. And they obviously know more than you because it's their job kind of to be here for sure. But again, I wanted to thank you for coming for our interview today. I appreciated having you here. I thought you gave us some really great insight and advice. And again, I wanted to thank you for coming, and we're going to sign off. Thank you for tuning in to Gigi's Football and Cheer, and we'll see you next time, guys.
Thanks for having me, Nick.